WBGO Newark, we're on air, online, on your mobile device. That's Mulgrew Miller from his recording the sequel, Mulgrew, with the group Wingspan, with Steve Nelson and Steve Wilson, as well as Richie Goods and Kareem Riggins, beginning things this hour as we have Mr. Miller and David Demsey, who lead the Jazz Studies program at Paterson University. Mulgrew, the director, and Dave, the coordinator of the program. A wonderful concert coming up this Sunday at 4 p.m. at Paterson University. They're celebrating the 35th anniversary of their Jazz Room series, and it's going to be quite a concert. Mulgrew and David, thank you for stopping by this afternoon. Good to see you both.
Thank you. Eulis, I'm pleased to be here.
Well, I guess
Thanks.
This morning, I don't want to move ahead too quickly. This morning, it's early in the morning for me too. It's good to see both of you guys.
Thank you.
And, most people who are familiar with jazz education know the reputation of Paterson. And this Jazz Room series is a pretty special thing for you guys. Now, as I mentioned, it's the 35th anniversary. The program itself has been around for 40 years. This series, 35. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the series, David. How did this get started?
Well, my predecessor, actually, there's only been two people in my job in 40 years, myself and Martin Criven. And when Marty started the program, soon after it started, it became obvious that the students needed more performance outlets besides just playing during the day for each other on campus. And so it started this series actually in the school cafeteria, where they would bring out artists sort of in a jam session format, and the students would come up and play. I think Joanne Brackeen was the first person. And they had a piano in the corner of the cafeteria, and they'd put up a stage and lighting. And, of course, then the crowds, after a few years, got so big they had to move it to Shea Auditorium, where it lives today. But the students are still involved. Every concert is preceded by a student ensemble. That's one of our 24 jazz groups. Mulgrew's group played just last Sunday. So there's still that student involvement, but now it's, over the last 35 years, really been a who's who of the jazz world on our stage.
Yes, and taking a look at the history of the program, you can see how many luminaries have been participating in this over the years. Mulgrew, who you've been now director of the program since 2006, I believe? 2005. You've been performing over the years in so many different contexts. So I can imagine that this particular series is unique and certainly gives you an opportunity to present to the students in particular, your experiences in a variety of different settings. How strongly do you feel about this series and what it does for the students?
Oh, I feel very strongly. It's important for them to get a real picture of what's going out there in the jazz world and to come in contact with the artists who are actually out there doing it, and so we're able to bring in all sorts of people, Benny Golson and who, significant names in the music industry.
Now, tell us about this particular program that's coming up on Sunday, about the celebration and stuff. How did this particular show come together?
Well, we actually we did something that's very unusual for the Jazz Room. Usually we'll contact an artist and say, you decide the music, you decide the band. But in this case, we actually formed this band of alumni that actually graduated from different eras. And each of the alumni had played with several of the others, but this band has never existed before this Sunday. So we have Fred Hendricks on trumpet, who actually will be here again the next Sunday. I believe he's been a member of the Basie Band now for a couple of years. So Fred keeps on appearing on our series in different guises, but never actually fronting a band. And we have Anton Denner on saxophone, pianist Matt King, who won the Thelonious, or was very involved, finished very high in the Thelonious Monk competition after he graduated. Doug Weiss on bass, who's a busy bassist around New York, and Joe Farnsworth on drums, who graduated just as I got there in '92. And of course, he's been on the road with Diana Krall and Cedar Walton and all sorts of people. So it's a great group.
Again, this concert coming up this Sunday at 4 p.m. at William Paterson University. The Jazz Room Series, celebrating 35 years with this super band that David just told you about. It's the longest-running jazz series on a college campus in the country. And speaking of Freddie Hendrix, we're going to play something from a recording by bassist Rufus Reid. And speaking of Rufus, I should say,
yes,
he was also a director of the program for some 20 years, right?
Yes, that's right. He succeeded Thad Jones. Right. He was, everything connects to everything else. Thad, when he was here, the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Quartet was in residence on campus. You'd go on a Tuesday afternoon to the library, and there you'd see Thad and the quartet set up playing tunes in front of the library. Right. And Rufus was the bassist. So when Thad departed to Denmark, Rufus took over, quote unquote, just for a week or two, and that just turned into 20 years.
How many stories are there like that? And well, to the benefit of everybody.
That's for sure.
I certainly would imagine. So we're going to hear something from a Rufus Reid recording that Freddie Hendrix is a part of. This CD called The Gatekeeper, and we're going to hear a tune called You Make Me Smile with Freddie Hendrix a part of this group, as we have David Demsey and Mulgrew Miller here in our studios on this Wednesday morning. Jazz 88 WBGO Newark. That's bassist Rufus Reid, a 2003 recording of his entitled The Gatekeeper, and that was You Make Me Smile with Freddie Hendrix on the trumpet, Rich Perry on the saxophone, John Stetch at the piano, and Montez Coleman on the drums, joining Rufus Reid. And Freddie Hendrix, a part of the alumni band that will be performing at William Paterson University this Sunday at 4 p.m. The super band, Freddie and Joe Farnsworth and others in this band. And by the way, Rich Perry, David, as you mentioned, a member of the faculty at William Paterson.
That's correct. We have 4 of us on the full-time faculty, Mulgrew and myself, and actually 2 fine trombonists. This must be some law against hiring 2 trombonists, but we've done that to great value. We have Tim Newman, great bass trombonist, who helps me run the Summer Jazz series, and then Pete McGinnis has just joined us, who's it's like hiring 4 guys, great arranger, great trombonist and singer. But then we have 20 adjunct faculty who come out each 1 day a week, and they each have one of our 24 ensembles and each teach a studio of students. So Rich is one of those people. Rich and Vincent Herring are our 2 saxophonists. So everybody's happy having both of them here.
Mulgrew Miller and David Demsey, the director and coordinator of the Jazz Studies program at William Paterson University, with us here at Jazz 88 this morning. Let's talk a bit, David, about the history of this program for those who aren't familiar with the beginnings of the whole program at William Paterson. Give us a sense of how this program got started.
Well, it started with a stroke of genius from my predecessor in hiring Thad Jones, and that 40 years ago really created a model that a lot of schools follow now, which is bringing major league jazz artist on the faculty full-time, not just in as a resident person, not just sort of in for a few days, but living there, being there every week. And, of course, Mulgrew is a shining example of that. And the students, that's the model that the program has followed for all these years, to have that artistic leadership from somebody who has spent their life on the road in the studios making this music directly into the classroom. It's all connecting the students directly with the reality of the music, not just over the history, but also today.
Now, as far as the director of the program is concerned, after Thad, the directorship went from Thad to Rufus, and then, as we mentioned, Rufus there for some 20 years, and then the very talented, the late pianist James Williams taking over from Rufus before Mulgrew took over. And Mulgrew, I know that you taking over this program from James was particularly poignant and important to you, because I know you had a very close relationship with him.
Yeah, I hope the listeners will forgive me for being so personal in my recollections of James Williams, but he was so great in every way. He was a great pianist, a great composer, and I knew James for better 31 years or so. You know, we were close friends. He was like a big brother to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say James was really cut out for this.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
he had before coming to William Paterson, he had taught at Berklee School of Music, and as a matter of fact, when I first met James, he was going to teach at Berklee School of Music. So you know, besides being a brilliant musician and composer, he was a great humanitarian. I like to say that
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people don't know that about
Mm-hmm.
James. And he was just cut out for being a teacher, you know, sharing and giving so much to you know, students, and there's big shoes to step in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, the thing about being an educator and a teacher in general, but specifically when you're talking about music and jazz music in particular, is that kind of humanity ends up being very significant in terms of how effectively you can impart the lessons that you're teaching to the students. So when you have someone who is, like you said, cut out to be it, and musicians, it seems like everyone isn't necessarily cut out for that, or don't necessarily think in terms of education. But those who do, and not only do they perform a very important role, but I can imagine it being very fulfilling personally in terms of what you're able to do in terms of educating the next generation of musicians and helping them along in terms of their careers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as being the person who chaired the search committees that found both James and Mulgrew. Now that we found them, we knew they were there. I guess we allowed them to find us, maybe. You know, that list is surprisingly small of people, artists at that level who are willing to give at that level.
Right.
That's a rarity.
I can speak personally, and it's interesting that Mulgrew made those comments about James. You know, it makes perfect sense that he would be the one to take the baton because he's in that mode as well. And you know, when you have musicians like that, it makes such a huge difference in your program.
It does, and you know, Mulgrew succeeded James when James graduated from Memphis State. Mulgrew was the next pianist in that college jazz ensemble. Right. Mulgrew, there was one pianist between the two of you in Art Blakey's band.
Yeah, my career seemed to just dovetail his in every kind of way.
Yeah.
And I didn't foresee this whole William Paterson thing happening. Mm-hmm. I said, here we go again.
It made perfect sense to me. Yeah. Still does every day.
I'm so happy that it happened. You know, I'm having a great time.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.